Greetings, greetings, greetings.
You've heard that saying, wherever you go, there you are. Hi, I'm Venus. Okay. You've heard that saying, wherever...
I was not trying to play that at all. Y'all bear with me. This is what I was trying to play. Greetings. Peace and love. Greetings. Sore. Oh, I did some working out and training the day before, running heels. That rest is so good. I would advise people to stretch before you go to bed. You will feel so amazing. But anyhow, let's give our honest source to the Creator for making all this possible. The ancestors known and unknown. Let me see. I'm gonna make this a little smaller. Okay, here we go. Gonna move my little icon, little camera icon. Can I expand this? But yeah, I'll go back. So anyway, yeah. I want to sit up straight. There we go. That sun is giving me life right now. Yeah, how y'all doing? Greetings, greetings, greetings. Let me jump right into this right now and play this video. Little kid knocking on the window. Don't know why he did that. Okay, why isn't this playing? I love getting clarity of stuff. Okay, I'm just trying to... Why isn't it saying something? Y'all bear with me. I'm trying to figure out why isn't it saying anything. Okie dokie.
Be going through the current transit. You've heard that saying, wherever...
I don't know when you figure this, but people who've been protected their whole lives get to build early. People who've had to protect themselves build later, but deeper. You're not too late. You're right on time.
Shout out to her. Shout out. I gotta play it again.
I don't know when you figure this, but people who've been protected their whole lives get to build early. People who've had to protect themselves build later, but deeper. You're not too late. You're right on time.
I say.
Yeah, you've heard that saying, wherever...
I don't know when you figure this, but people who've been protected their whole lives get to build early. People who've had to protect themselves build later, but deeper. You're not too late. You're right on time.
My problem is I address shit. That's so funny that I'm talking about this right now because...
There you are. You've heard that saying, wherever you go, there you are.
Listen. So again, that ain't even a problem that I address it. It's just what it is. But let's make it very clear to a lot of people, you know, to the collective and individually. I was just expressing, and I'm glad I came across that message because I was kind of hesitant, like, should I create some content or whatever? But at the same moment, I was like, I didn't know. I was just taking more of a moment to myself, and I was like, let me actually just see what insight I can get on something. And I came across that video, and lo and behold, it was perfect because what she mentioned is right on cue. Because I used to feel a lot of shame and guilt, or wanted to feel a lot of shame and guilt, whether it was mine that I carried or from you know, things passed through the lineage or so forth. And one thing I realized is this, there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of shame and guilt around people who feel they should be more successful or more have material gains or even more educated, whatever you want to say. Because the reason I'm saying this is what she mentioned in there is that a lot of people who have been protected protected by, let's say, daddy or mommy's money, or protected legally, protected in other ways, have more so an advantage to build. But from my perspective, I'm one of those people who, being that I had to grow up in survival, and then slowly but surely now letting go of that survival mindset and now surrendering to more of what I could and could not control, or not even just control, but even unlearning behavior patterns around control. And the reason I say that is because when I realized, and I'm pretty sure this is probably going to click for a lot of people right now, but especially for me, the clarity that I'm receiving is that when I had those childhood experiences and traumas, I realized like how that me not having control or being able to protect myself, it carried into relationships where I realized, even with myself, why I try to focus on having so much of control of my life now, or even through into adulthood, and even through the fact of how I can come off and be perceived as controlling, and not intentionally, but in a way to where when growing up in certain environments where unsafe environments, you finally get a grasp on life later on in life, as she mentioned, like later on, where there's a deeper awareness. It's not to devalue or take anything away from people who were protected, but we're coming from different perspectives where I have a deeper understanding and overstanding on why it is I do what I do. So my approach will be completely different than someone who was protected, who did have a more stable environment, who did have more of a support system, and did not grow up in a survival mindset or an unsafe environment, or so forth and so forth. And for me, I carried a lot of shame and guilt around the fact of why did I have to go through that, and then now letting go of that narrative of survival's remorse. Because even when I get something or obtain something, why do I feel like I have to save someone else or reach back in a way to save them from the karma or lessons that they're also needing to go through, instead of me trying to take on their lessons or their almost taking on their inability to face what they need to face for their own evolution, for their own internal growth, their emotional stability, security, and so forth. So for me, that video just literally gave me clarity here, and I was like, whoa, I need not to feel guilty over the fact of I've had to start things later. And one of the most challenging things for me was, there's a saying that goes like, putting the horse before the carriage. And that can be a broad statement, or even seen through many different lenses. One of the biggest things for me was never having someone who really, growing up in certain environments where you have an over-sexualized culture, or, so many different avenues of how we were supposed to see ourselves, what influences we had around men and women, the influence that we had, the misconception on how it is to grow from a boy, allowing us to be a boy and grow into a manhood, and so forth. And also just the fact of allowing that to be a joyous experience. So when we did not have that, what I did not have is realizing like that's the thing at a later date or later time now that I'm not just longing for, but there's a deeper awareness on obtaining it, if that makes sense. As my partner and I, we come from two different demographics. It's not to say she hasn't went through things traumatically or whatever, but there was a protection there when it came to, let's say, and I'm just using this as an example, if I grew up in an environment where you can say it's poverty stricken, or even the fact that you had someone grew up on Section 8 or was not as financially stable as, let's say, another person. And with that, that is two different perspectives to why I go so, I don't like to say hard, but have so much, I would like to say, look at things more deeper, in a deeper lens than someone who isn't more so even my complexion from what I've dealt with here in the country or in the environment, how my image as a man, as a darker boy at a point in time, is created, or a narrative that has been misleading to the community, to social settings, the climate globally, and so forth. And being that, let's say she grew up in an environment where she had a father who protected her, let's say daddy's money, so that perspective would be completely different in mine, to where here it is, I didn't know anything about financial literacy. But the beauty of it is that when you meet someone, if you're able and willing to see the internal growth and external growth, to realizing like my perspective on money was completely different than hers. I didn't have this attachment, or let's say a healthy relationship with money. And now I start to realize the importance of the mother wound and the currency, or the emotional resonance that's connected to how we all show up in the world. Meaning that, for example, seeing people who go from job to job, like I've seen people who go from job to job growing up. I've seen people never have nothing stable. Okay, that connection, from my perspective, that shows the inability to have emotional security, or having a person having dealt with some type of, let's say, post-traumatic stress disorder, or some type of chronic nervous system, having something where they're not present or secure within themselves, so they don't feel that they can withstand something more stable. Or it can be other things to where they just simply don't want to. It's so many things to where it all depends on the learned behavior. And that's one thing that, for me, what I realized seeing people grow up, like I would see a lot of relatives and people go from this position. I'd be like, bro, and then it made sense because it played out to their housing as well. Never having nothing stable, never having a stable relationship. Again, the internal world of that. So what I begin to recognize, come on, throat, is bring the accountability I had to accept up to this moment, where I am starting things later, where again her perspective, that her learning from her lens is seeing that she had things more stable. And let me tell you how I can say I came in, and this is accountability, how when you have, I'm going to use the term unequally yoked, or have someone unstable, or the instability that they're used to, whether unconsciously I didn't recognize this, is that from the inability to be stable within myself, and seeing that with, that coming from a mother, and then not having that structure with men, that right there in itself, I pretty much, how could I say this? Yeah, destroyed a lot of people's life with my unconscious actions, or not realizing how much not facing who I am within allowed me to have a ripple effect on their life. And you don't know the catastrophic effects of how long that will last, or the healing that person should go through, and so forth. So for me, I start to recognize my patterns, like, whoa, I can see how when I came into this person's life, my viewpoint, my unhealthy attachment to others, or the mother wound, things that I did not face, and bringing this into a relationship where I was like, oh my gosh. Now later on, I realized to have a deeper awareness. Now I'm realizing, like, oh, my unsafetyness about myself created an unsafe environment within a home. My inability to face and be stable affected not only that relationship, but that relationship, if going back to not feeling safe and secure. No matter how big that house is, no matter how many rooms, no matter nothing, the beauty of partnership and even the beauty of the matriarchal and patriarchal is the fact of how the importance of the value of the woman, the mother, and then how that affects the children. So it play hands in hand with man and woman, because for me, I've said it before, a man can destroy his kingdom or empire through his actions, through his assertiveness, and whether that be through a wounded masculinity, eventually it will have an effect on everyone else. Then she will start to display the same wounded masculinity from the femininity, meaning that wherever I haven't fixed, or not even just fixed, but acknowledged within myself when it came to the mother wound, that still will play out in a masculine way through every relationship dynamic, whether with my partner, whether with my daughter, whether with other women, and so forth. So again, having to take and reflect and take full responsibility to be like, wow, and not feel guilt and shame around what I've had to learn later on in life after the fact of knowing that I fucked up. Not that I know, saying like, oh, I'm fucked up. No, it's miraculous to having come into this awareness and then share it with you, to realize like it's beauty in taking full accountability, just as you're in a partnership, and a partnership mirror backs mother and father energy, whether it's wounded or healthy. And with that allows you to grow. That allows you to be like, I'm holding you accountable, rather than a trauma bond that continues where no one's holding each other accountable. And a lot of us, or some of us who have experienced survival mentality, certain poverty-stricken areas or certain demographics where all we know is to trauma bond, all we know is dysfunctionality, all we know is to be passive-aggressive to how we feel, all we know is to sit back and allow the shit to just trickle over into the next generation rather than addressing things. And with that, you will have a cycle continue of the same shit through your kids. So for me, the greatest thing, those who've been following me, the greatest thing that could have ever happened was the shelter experience, or going through things where it made me sit down with myself. I'm going to therapy. It made me realize like, wow, I don't need to feel shame and guilt around what I did not know. And even through that process, I had people, things that wanted to make me feel guilty for not having, and this is so funny, for not having what people feel like I should have had, at a certain age. And the reason why I'm bringing up this is because when I'm talking about the fact of how people who were protected, so let me bring you to this lens. It's not all people that are considered Caucasian or whatever nationality or their lighter complexion, but this is so big because when you look at a certain, I'm going to use the term white privilege, when you look at the climate of a country who protects racism, who protects structural racism, who protects self-hatred, who enables all things that are not harmonious, that are not authentic, that are not of truth and love, then who is it necessarily protecting? So when you're asking someone, again, seeing from my demographics of being with, using the term interracial, a connection as such, I naturally am able to highlight the fact of what I went through. So a lot of people, for a lot of you that are lighter shade, whether you're in the Americas or whatever you are, there is this black and white thinking that people have of right and wrong. And with that, this what keeps a shield over people passive aggressively believing that it's okay to do what I'm doing and there's no consequences to it. And see, with my partnership and with my connection, I've had to express to, a deeper understanding and understanding to my partner, like, Listen, people of a darker shade depending on their demographics and the climate. Not all of them, because some people have financial stability and wealth that has been passed down depending on their generation. But for those of them, the climate of what we see and have seen play out through the darker and brown people and so forth, there is this almost scarcity and fear around people really getting more of a deeper understanding, overstanding later in life, and then now having to try to build upon that, rather than a person like yourself, where in the last couple hundred years, an image of a woman that is healthy, that is more stable, that is more secure, that is more nice, that's more kind, will be a woman that looks like you. But with that, that is something that has been protected, and that's what America or people have built upon, is that image of that per se. So then when you have something that's darker, it's automatically deemed as evil. It's automatically deemed as not valuable. It's automatically seen as something that shouldn't be encouraged or supported or even have compassion for. And so with that, again, we're realizing there's a deeper of course, when you have people of lighter shade, depending on their upbringing and their generations and how they aggressively have had people to overlook the fact of how much they have been protected by a society, a group, or even the governmental structures, so that they can progress or move forward. But then now, later on in life, now for the more deeper understanding that I have, is realizing that I'm not too late. And a lot of you're not too late, no matter your complexion, no matter what the world has given you, this false illusion, no matter what has been sold to you, that just because this person is of this status, this political person or sports or whatever, that is darker, that they have an advantage just because. And not to mention, again, they also are a part of what has been protected for a lot of these structures to even be into place. They bring upon certain characters, and those characters, whether they know it unconsciously or not, are still trying to protect the same structures that were built upon what? Not even protecting them. Not even protecting them. That's why you see when a lot of them do speak up, or later on in their life, or they come to the self-realization like this corporation or this thing isn't for me and so forth, then they get a more deeper awareness, and then they start to realize it was never created to protect you. It was all about an image, and the image that is being protected is not rooted in truth and honesty and love and so forth. So now, again, for a lot of you, realize it's never too late. It's not too late. You just had to grow in an environment where a lot of us are coming to the self-realization and having a deeper awareness on the fact of, again, me seeing what I've experienced has allowed me now to realize, like, wow, I'm in a great place right now. I'm safe, I'm centered, and I had to grow up in that survival. I had to grow up in that unsafe environment. So later on in life, now that I'm building with fucking intention. I'm building brick by brick. I'm building stone by stone, I should say. I'm building something that not only, it's not about it lasting, it will be for longevity. It will be for generations to come. It will be for the fact of, it's a deeper awareness around not just me, but the bigger picture of the collective of the youth, and learning from the elders before. So the awareness around, again, my partner, her experience, and realizing like you were protected, as a lot of people collectively don't even realize that. And what you're seeing now is the false empowerment and false identity around what they were protected by. And that's a lot of people realizing, you're seeing now through spiritual judgment from what plays out spiritually and physically, that money can't protect you, because money is spiritual first. And then whatever your intentions on how you built that It has a lot to do with even the structures around what it is that will come and haunt you, or will come and rebalance itself through the fact of how did you build that. No one questions the fact of why do we sit back so passive aggressively, or just ask ourselves, well, how did that structure come into place? What is protecting these people, this image, these celebrities, or certain and all this and other stuff? Because when you get down to the nitty gritty, when you get down to the root of it, other than what the fruit has been produced, when you get down to the root of it, it makes a lot of sense that a lot of us are supposed to see and been protected spiritually, knowing that we wasn't supposed to be a part of certain structures and so forth. So when the sister mentioned like how people who were protected early are allowed to build earlier, then you will see the split in society, or you see who has what it may seem as an advantage, but that doesn't mean they're more valuable than you, that just because you grew up in a certain demographic. No, it was for you to get this awareness, just as myself, to realize like I'm a firm believer in spiritual protection, to not be a part of certain structures, to not have been, that's what I feel my protection was, and still is protecting me, rather than, I take honor now to build on later, because now I'm able to see, oh my gosh, I'm glad that I didn't build with this person, or I'm glad that I didn't get attached to this, and and so forth. So that goes back to what I was talking about, how the beauty of some of your relationships or your dynamics can highlight the fact that you could have met someone who was protected by a mom or dad's money or something and so forth, but then you have a deeper awareness on spiritually what you're supposed to usher in that rebalances things, to remind people, hey, what you receive physically also has a spiritual meaning to it, also has a deeper awareness to it. And this is what, again, I bring along to tell people, come back home to yourself is coming back home to you spiritually, to the emotional part of you, to the mental, to the parts of you that are unseen, to connect you to your ancestry, to connect to you, because to think about for a lot of you that were protected by a society or a place, and you didn't even realize that there was, my partner, she didn't realize some people don't realize that there was, I'm going to use the term white as an adjective, like white privilege. They don't even know. And the reason why, again, everyone doesn't live in that world. So let's make that very clear. Everyone doesn't live in that world of they seeing that it's a privilege. I had to make her aware of this. I was like, look, when I get pulled over somewhere in a certain town or something that was built upon keeping people like me out, and this is still generationally has changed over time to where, again, just because the suit changed, just because the badge, or just because, such and such and such, we were, this town or this place, the energy still carries into these people from generations, whether they know it or not, or whether they do, they still carry that. Only thing that has changed is their uniforms. The only thing that has changed is, their cars and stuff like that. But internally, they haven't. So again, I had expressed to her, like, when the sister was talking about protection and being able to build early, that's what a lot of people don't realize, that y'all have believed that these people or some people have an advantage or are 20 steps ahead of you, when some of the greatest people that come along are some of the most, intentional, or people, let's say, if you want to use the term gurus, or certain people that come along, are people, and they've done studies on this, on people who have went through some of the most treacherous and traumatic experiences, and later on in life they have a deeper awareness to be able to reach the masses or the collective later on in life. And that's where the delayed gratification comes from. Building for long term, not this instant gratification. Just because people build stuff early, just because they have this money or certain things attached, or certain things that were, gave them this, seemed like upper hand or advantage. Listen, there's a divine things playing out. There's things. This is the divine order of things. So with that, there's a lot of confusion around people believing like just because you see this person on social media or how the media is, being almost like misleading to have people want to feel that they should want someone else's life. When you are assigned and designed and created to go through what you're going through, to build on later in life and with intention, with pure intentions. Just because someone has built on something early, and this is what I learned, I'm glad I got a deeper awareness on how the fuck they built that shit. Do you get what I'm saying? Imagine, I'm gonna give you different perspectives and levels of things. Imagine seeing someone, let's start with the family. Just because this person, because I used to feel like this, I'm trying to tell you, I used to feel like this. I would see people get certain positions, or I would see certain things where they have things more materially than I did early. And I would be like, dang, bro, like, what I gotta do to get that? Or, and what we do, we'll deter ourselves, we'll turn off from our destiny, we'll move away from something and try to follow someone else. And it's still lessons in that just to come back to yourself. But we'll feel like we gotta veer off and do what they're doing. Or we see this big company, we see these people that have this and all this money, and we get caught up in the fantasy instead of the reality of the present of what the divine is showing us. Like, hey, no, this is your lane. You gonna fuck around and wreck trying to veer off and go somewhere else and take a detour. So, we growing up, I would see people with certain stuff, and for instance, let's say like the dope boys or the people who grew up with the gang members or certain stuff where you would see like, man, the flashy stuff, the fantasy, the illusion that people show. And just like going to another neighborhood, you see bigger houses. Once you go outside of your neighborhood, you're thinking it's just apartments, or you're thinking it's just this. And again, you don't know what people have done to create what they've created. And just because they get things early on in life doesn't mean that your prosperity or your gifts aren't awaiting you later. That's what's the miracle of life. When I realize I am the miracle, it's a miracle that I'm still here, and it's a miracle that I'm able to come into this awareness later on. So just because you see someone earlier, and that's why I feel like a lot of us we're stressed over young and our parents and stuff. It's like feeling like we gotta gain this material stuff instead of getting a deeper awareness on what it is we're supposed to be creating and building that doesn't look familiar to others. And that's another thing that I realized, like how people what's unfamiliar, they either judge, be captivated, or they're intimidated by. So for me, again, the connection that I've experienced with my partner, or even previous connections, what made it more significant about us is that I realized, like, did I feel like in our connection, I had people come in, saying like, wanting me to feel guilty. I had family members too, because they felt like I should have had more earlier. But what I paid attention to is like, I was like, dang, you got the house, you got the car, you got all this stuff, but you are miserable. You're not even happy. You're not even like, you're giving this illusion off. You got the money, you got all this other stuff. But what I start to recognize is that was the false identity around what was created to protect them. I'm not discrediting people who have built something and got it early. Kudos. But everyone's life isn't like that. Everyone's life isn't supposed to be the same. And so what I'm gratifying is the fact that I am building on later, but for longevity, but also the intention behind it, the intentions behind it, also the responsibility in maintaining that. So again, people that have built early in life and the protection around what they've had, again, the protection part is so important, because when you see how, and I'm gonna use this like, let's say someone could go out there and, let's say a person that had grew up with mom and dad money, and they would go out there and, they didn't have to work. But if they did, they can just pretty much use the money for them. But then dad or mom can come along and give them certain monies and, give them certain things and so forth. And I'm not saying this is all people, what I recognize is that there's no depth to a lot of people. I drive through the neighborhoods, certain like wealthy communities, or certain well-off communities, and it's like they're all doing the same thing. It's like, walking the dog and all this. It's such an illusion to me, because it's like all this. My house has to be perfect the way it is. I have to have my grass cut. I have to do this and that. And I'm telling you, I've been around people like this. Not all, but I've been around. I'm like, wow. And we get so enamored or so amazed by stuff like that. I'll be sitting like, but I guarantee if I had conversations, it would just be about money. It would just, look, money is a beautiful thing. To where the learning the feminine principles, or the properties around how it's used. But it's just a fact of like, I can just tell certain conversations where I realize like there's no authenticity in it. There's someone's trying to prove themselves, or that class of people who want to show like, this is who I am, but there's no depth to them emotionally. So when I say having a deeper awareness around growing up in the survival, that's just where I feel like there's a gap of some people who are in these spaces, but they want to be a part of a culture, or they want to be a part of things, but there's nothing they can relate. And the first thing they do is talk about money or who they are, rather than letting their energy speak for itself, if that makes sense, or just being who they are naturally. And I feel like that comes with the fact of, the baby boomers and what has protected the baby boomers. And when you see what has been built, a lot of things people built early has a lot to do with the fact of what, again, has been protecting them. And what a lot of people use is money. What a lot of people hide behind is their image. And if you haven't paid close attention, no matter your status, no matter your culture, no matter your creed or whatever, that in essence, to the core of you, means nothing to a person who later on in life has come to a deeper awareness of self and seeing the bigger picture beyond the material things, or having a more in-depth exchange or conversation about life experience and so forth. Who are you without it? And I'm not saying people who are on your way up, but it's more so I pay attention to more of like seeing the bridge between people who have such as myself, not feeling guilt around not having certain things just immediately, but then seeing the judgment around how the world view people just because they're in a certain demographic, or just because they don't have a certain money or status and so forth. But they're not realizing that person didn't have the same protection that you have, whether it's around your image, when we're talking about a certain white privileges or certain privileges, even in, because it's not even just that, it's just a fact of, like, I recognize this in the sororities, the fraternities, different clubs and certain forth, the classes, all these things that really divide people. It's like there is some type of protection around it. I know people that get into stuff and they immediately, there are things that you don't see behind the scenes, people that come in and make sure that their slate is clean, or make sure they don't get into deeper trouble or get into certain things. And in reality, no one can outrun karma. If it don't get you this lifetime, it'll get your children. That's what I be expressing to people, is that the deeper awareness I have on things later in life is the fact of knowing that I'm no different than anyone else, wherever demographic they grew up in. Their vices, their karma may be completely different than mine. With me, I had to recognize is that is the intention behind why I should not have joined or be a part of this, and I don't care to be a part of this. I'm more concerned about being me, about being authentic, walking in integrity. And so that's what I realized the beauty of knowing now, again, whether it's a family dynamic, community, and so forth. Again, there are things that people don't realize, that when you're seeing things on a superficial level or in the public eye and physically, being how these structures were built, there are things protecting them, whether it be spiritual forces or whether that be playing out into the physical. But again, balance has to be restored no matter what. And so for me, I'm realizing, like, wow, the restoration, the truth that I'm uncovering from having a more deeper awareness around what it is I'm here to do, why I'm here to do it, and then realizing, not looking for the acceptance from a society or from a world that doesn't prioritize or have a similar belief system. And so for that, which is so important, is that for instance, I have to lean on more realizing what is divinely protecting me spiritually, and seeing that what physically isn't going to protect me, or the same forces that people have, what's protecting them doesn't want to protect me, if that makes sense. Because a lot of what people are doing behind closed doors, or what and how have they built earlier in their life, a lot of you will realize, and this is for the spiritual community, a lot of you realize, like, coming to that self-awareness, that your divine protection is not to be a part of said groups or societies or certain things as you come into your deeper awareness, whether it's industry and so forth. It's because you being a part of certain things, you can still be divinely protected. But when things start to get to a place where you realize, like, this isn't for me, that's simply because however that structure, that corporation, that business, or whatever, that foundation was built, whatever's protecting it spiritually may not agree or come into agreement what you're here to do, what you're wanting to do, whether it be art, music, and writings or so forth. That's the thing about the danger, even in the fact of knowing what you're protected by, and knowing that the opposing energy could be the opposite. Well, I'm saying the same thing. That opposing energy is not in cahoots or not even in alignment for what is protecting you on what you're supposed to build. So this is why, again, later on in life, I'm grateful. I'm like giving honor to the fact of, like, I'm grateful to realize, like, I'm supposed to have seen what wasn't protecting my lineage, but what was protecting me to be able to step out and to rebuild something later on in life. And those things will be added to me. So that from which you thought was taken from you due to the fact of certain people building earlier, is because you were not supposed to be a part of it. That was your divine protection. I know some of y'all supposed to hear this. That's what being a black sheep, that's what being outcasted, that's what, whether from a setting, from family, government, country, so forth. That's because you were supposed to build upon something, but also before you built, and what you thought you were supposed to be building with family, you was also supposed to destroy, whether you knew it or not. And what I mean by destroy is because you were supposed to walk your own path. So by walking your own path, you didn't even know, unintentionally, you were destroying the illusion, not within the family, within yourself, but in the world. And that can piss a lot of forces spiritually, and people physically, and their foundations. They can piss them. They're angry because you thought you were supposed to be a part of something earlier, and not realizing they were supposed to build that. And some of them, until their later years, can't come into that awareness. But for some of us, we're supposed to build on later, because we're supposed to get divine insight or deeper awareness around what it is we're doing, how we're supposed to do it, taking no shortcuts, and then realize, like, wow, the clarity comes to where I'm supposed to be doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, because it's much more bigger than me. But a lot of people who built upon stuff earlier, who wants the instant gratification, they're going to see why here that, or you're going to see why clearly how, why you were caught up in a fantasy, or they were caught up in things, why a lot of their structures or certain things were never going to withstand not just the test of time, but literally were created for generations, because how much it would have tainted and destroyed a lot of the generations after. What I mean by that is from the family structure all the way to levels, as above, so below, as within, so without. So a lot of these things, I start to realize, like, whoa, I was getting clarity. I wasn't supposed to be a part of that relationship, that business, that industry, that corporation, that religion, all of those things. Because what's done in the dark comes into the light. So a lot of those things, again, there were certain forces. Let me make sure I say this right. Malevolent forces, on a deeper spiritual level, malevolent forces that were protecting a lot of people's structures. I keep looking over here to the camera, but there was a lot of malevolent forces protecting these structures in place. And now that you have things balancing out, you have the benevolent forces, or things that are balancing out, and the light is here. And if I hope I said that correctly, like the benevolent and malevolent, yeah. If y'all know what I'm saying, because I could have twisted around to where I'm, matter of fact, no, this will do. Let me make sure I say this correctly. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, the malevolent forces. Now listen to it. Look at what it says. Describe someone or something that wishes to cause evil, harm, or ill will towards others. So with that, the malicious intent on, when you look at these structures, and it's funny how I'll come to a subject about, people who grew up in, what the sister was saying, like people who grew up in, who were protected early and were able to build. Imagine a world that was at a time consumed by malevolent forces more than you see benevolent forces. So again, there was a point in time where people, especially, this is to my hill of spiritualists and so forth, that you were outnumbered. You were outnumbered until the divine stepped in. I'm laughing because it's like, until a lot of us returned and stepped in and realized, like, nah, the same benevolent forces too, like, they have their purpose, but they also are, there's rulership over them, let's just say. And this is for a lot of, in the spiritual community, like, a lot of people don't realize, like, just because people come off a certain way don't mean that they're not consumed or working with benevolent forces. So yeah, so with that, you're talking about structures that have literally had ill intent or even wishes to cause harm. Look at your medical system. Look at all these structures that are built upon narcissism and control. All of this is falling, and a lot of us don't realize how much that a lot of our matriarchal were a part of it. A lot of our patriarchal, this is what it has enabled. So again, that protection early, that what you see structures built, because through eons and through years, this is what was, was a thing at a point in time until balance is being restored, where again you've had people who have had ill intent. When you have a passive aggressive person, when you have someone who's passive aggressive, who haven't faced things within themselves, most likely they are under some type of spiritual warfare or going through something to where they're not even recognizing or knowing the balance between themselves or what it is that they're here. Let's say someone, again, due to their upbringing, whatever their demographic, they can still have ill intent no matter their culture and creed. But when you're talking about structures built in place that has been protected earlier for people to build, this is what you see now. That what has happened to our kids is what has happened to us and so forth. Because outside of what you see physically, there are things behind the scenes and the unseen that, again, that wants to cause you harm and be malicious and so forth, malicious intent and so forth, spitefulness, as they say, harmful influence, entities, again, malevolent spirits. For we don't fight with flesh and blood, but that verse of spiritual wickedness in high and low places, principalities and so forth. So it don't matter the character of people who show up. You don't know what's fueling them. You don't know what's behind them spiritually. But a lot of us who can see it know that, listen, the time is up, and also now a new way, a new world is forming. So, of course, when people don't know what the resistance that they have towards the shift, you're talking about generations that have been run and fueled by malevolent forces, bruh. You're talking about people, when I say warlike and violent and stuff like that, that is a fucking spiritual thing before it is physical. So, what's been protecting them? We on a deeper level. There you have it. So, with that being said, that's a climate, even with the fact of why our kids been acting the way they have, why it is parents, guardians, and so forth have been acting the way they have and so forth. When you look at it on a deeper level, this is what's at play. So with that, to a lot of you that have, as you reclaim your power, claim your power again, especially for the matriarchal, you have to realize, like, there's a patriarchal system that has been in place of the powers that ain't it used to be, where there were malevolent forces, spirits behind the scenes who intentionally wanted to cause you harm. So now that you take back your power, you claim your power, you claim power over those malevolent forces. That's just like going through something. You will hear the preachers, pastor, whomever it is, and say, like, in the name of this person, but at a time, you got to realize, like, you have to take full control or full power back over your life, and only you can do it. And that's where you begin to realize, like, you tame that, not so much tame the beast, but balance the life of knowing that your darkness is a part of your light, and they're one and the same. And this is where the evil aspect, or all these things where dark has been perceived as also being malevolent. But when you don't have a balance between benevolence and malevolent forces, or you don't have a balance, this is where your concept of angels and demons comes from. And those who are more in tune and realizing, like, all angels aren't of benevolence, or all demons aren't of malevolence, and so forth. People, what do you mean? Listen, those who are in tune will know exactly what I'm talking about, because again, that's just like saying someone can come along and have the most externally be so beautiful, but again can have ill intention towards you, ill will towards you and your family. And this is why a lot of us, as we reclaim our power through the fact of what has been consuming our family dynamics. So when she was talking about the protection per se, it's, yes, you can build upon something. Yes, that's universal law. Yeah, you can build upon something, and this is the beauty of it. I'm getting clear with this. Yes, it what has been allowed is what people are right now, like, don't get in a spiritual sense. Yes, it has been allowed for humanity or people to build upon things in such an evil, harmful, disgusting way, or in a harmful influence, as it said. But also, just so what? Universal law is what you put out, what you reap, you shall sow. So with that now, there are people who coming in their lineage, whatever it is, who hold more of a benevolence to be able to see the malevolent behavior, the harmful behavior, to bring balance. So with that, yes, there were times where there was forces at play that have built upon things, and that's what has been protecting these structures. But now, where people that say the light is here to shine light on that shit. So they either have to, this is where you have people become allies, or this is where you have people want to continue their mischievous ways or malicious ways. And either way, they can outrun karma. That's either spiritually or physically. It all plays out. It's one and the same. So the bigger picture from this is that as you build upon later in life, you have to opportunity to build with ill intent to harm others, or you have the intention on building towards something more greater than you, which is more seen as a benevolence, so that your generations can not live in such a harmful way, but with the intentions of purity, where you see unrighteous and righteous. All of these things again is to highlight what has been transpiring, the energy that has unfolded, and so forth. So from this, I want y'all to let y'all know that when you look at the media, when you look at certain things, the divine mother aspect, the energy of that is what has been harming our mothers, who has had ill intent. And that's just outside of just the climate, the foundation. There still are people, because people will jump to color. And I tell y'all, it's just as much as spiritual, but also there are people that are of certain shade who also have a hand in that. So with that, you got to realize, like, a lot of us now having this awareness and getting this clarity, we claim power over these malevolent forces. And then it's almost like you become like, this is the spiritual sense of yin and yang, the oneness of like the balance between how they portray the movies, good versus evil, or so forth, or like that. But when you look at like movies or even things like that, everything serves its purpose. So instead of like getting caught up in getting caught up in the fact of who's who and what's what, it's more so focused on your inner demons or your inner turmoil, your inner spiritual warfare, to get clarity and awareness around how it is you're supposed to elevate. Your way of thinking could have been of something that's harmful. Suicide or self-inflicted things, self-sabotage. Okay, so how do you want to change that trajectory? Holler at me if you want, me to speak or something, said, or contact me through my email or whatever. But this is where discernment comes in. A lot of you are here to ascend or evolve your lineage as a patriarch, as a matriarch, and so forth. Your healing is your ancestors' healing. Not every ancestor. I be calling them ancestors. I tell people, not every ancestor. Okay. Now I'm gonna leave, so I'll come, so we can go. Not every ancestor had pure intentions. Not every ancestor had, again, and this is what you're able to recognize now, playing out through family members. So again, just as much as spiritual as physical, not everyone has intentions on evolving. Not everyone has intentions on being better. They're not wanting to. It's not sometimes necessarily their fault. It's sometimes what they're consumed by. On the deeper level as such. Like, again, this message ain't for everybody. Some people will object to it. Some people will be angry. Sometimes I'll be like, is it even them? Sometimes it's just the forces at play. They don't want to change, so that whatever's consuming them, whatever their spiritual warfare, they're not able to see past that. And so think about this. It's spiritual warfare in your connections, in life and so forth. There's spiritual warfare everywhere, on the media, on a lot of things. Let's say if I'm here to evolve past sexual traumas, right? There are forces at play that want to keep me consumed by how I view myself, and the forces between, like, do I stay in the darkness and be consumed by, the traumas, or do I speak up? Do I acknowledge it, take full accountability on how it played out? Do I give power to the person who did it? Or do I rise above it and realize, like, nah, I'm pushing that shit away. I still recognize it, so I'm able to see it now. Then I'm able to see it spiritually play out through other people. So I'm able to now use that power, not to harm others or have ill will or take advantage. Let me use this to be able to enlighten or share a message, to be a guide to people who don't know how to come out of it, or just need a supporting hand, but also be mindful of protecting myself, because those things are still at play, because those very things still want to come in. And if you're not if you're not spiritually protected, or certain things for people who are aware of this, then it can try to seep in to see if, like, oh, have you learned this? Are you going to elevate above this? And this can come in through, like, celibacy, absence, however you want to say it, or a lot of things where that's my example, like how I had to really beat this thing, or that doesn't mean it just go away. No, corn, the P word, certain things like that, where through even after my celibacy, I got a deeper awareness on those things. I still was having thoughts or having things around, do I need to go see that? Do I need to pull it up? Stuff like that. That's the honesty and authenticity in it, but that's not going to keep me from enjoying life. That's just vices. Those just things are lessons. So I had to realize, like, is it as strong as it was, if that makes sense? That's where consumption comes in. It's like when you're choosing to heal or elevate or go beyond what your family used to do, you will be removed, but that doesn't mean the repressed memories and emotions or the thoughts or certain things doesn't come up. Those are the forces at play that most people don't realize. And then still, you have people who, behind the scenes, still do stuff, who have ill will towards the fact of, well, I'm going to think about this person in a way, or I'm going to do this antics, this magic, or certain stuff behind the scenes, and to manipulate, and that's a whole nother subject. But either way, y'all, the deeper awareness for a lot of you that came and got this message is that in your lineage was playing out a lot of you in your dynamics, even individually with yourself. You have the opportunity to evolve. You have the opportunity to love yourself. And in loving yourself, you will be able to recognize what has kept you from doing that. Who is connected to that? Because again, when I'm able to look at the fact of, I can say my mother loved me, I can say my father loved me, and people love me. That doesn't mean that they did not have ill intentions. That doesn't mean that they didn't have intentions on not seeing me progress, and so forth. But what I'm able to recognize, I'll tell you, the protection that I had, knowing that I had a powerful spirit or essence to be able, and that's the thing about when you hear chosen, it's you that come along and do this, because the thing about everyone had an opportunity, no matter if it's a sister, brother, or mom and dad, they had to choose as well. It's the fact of the willingness to be able to stay consistent and persistent, even when you're amongst people who are in their own spiritual warfare, going through transition, seeing people leave your life, seeing people physically leave your life. There's so many things that play into that, to where it's about staying rooted. And the important parts about being rooted and grounded is also about the balance between shit is going to happen, you can't control it, how am I going to respond to this? And there's no difference in when you are going through a healing journey or reflecting and so forth. Certain energy will come up, certain things and memories, anger, so forth around the situation. It's literally a balance, or finding, neutralizing, however you want to perceive it, or finding a way to realize, like, what is better protecting me. And that's the thing I've learned later on in life. Like, wow, I'm glad I got here, because I can say I'm building something with the intention on bettering myself, making a better decision, even on the surface to other people, even if it don't look like what they think it should look like, because they want it to look familiar. See, that's where the forces of manipulation will come in, to have you believing it's supposed to look like this. But again, when you have an overall narrative and things crumbling, then wouldn't your results be the same as theirs? But in actuality, even if you try so much for your results to be their way, what satisfaction or what fulfillment will it bring you if you're not being authentic or true with yourself? So remember, it's okay to come into things later. It's okay to enjoy the fruits of your labor and so forth. It's okay to realize, like, you have the tools, but the divine wanted you to come into certain things later on, so that you didn't fuck it up, so that you didn't, like, it's okay that we made certain decisions. At the same moment, we don't have to beat ourselves up or have guilt or shame around the fact that I had to start a little later in life, and I'm okay with that. That's where you have to be at peace with. I realized, I had to start later in life. Then again, I'm starting a little early. I just had to face the little things a little different. I had to rearrange some things. I had to declutter. I had to rebrand myself. I had to create a whole new identity around what it is to be a man, what it is to honor the inner child, what it is, and so forth. And guess what? I had to make peace to realize that's unfamiliar to the world. So I can look for the protection of the world. I have to realize there's something more deeper where I'm being protected and guided by, even if the world doesn't enter and overstand. So yeah, y'all take that, receive it, let it go, whatever. Peace and blessings. Shalom.